Concepts in a Teacup by HS Consultancy, presented by Harry Sewell.
Intersectionality. So why am I including a talk on intersectionality within this series? Well, I guess it's because I'm aware that kind of out there in the general public, but also in the fields within which I work in health and social care, I often hear the term intersectionality used to describe the multiplicity of identities, almost like an A plus B plus C relationship. If someone's black, a woman, and lesbian, then people kind of say, yeah, you know, what we're seeing is intersectionality, and we need to take account of all of the aspects of someone's identity. Well, that's a kind of very partial interpretation of the concept of intersectionality, and it's used so widely, and unsurprisingly, most people haven't gone back to source to really understand what intersectionality refers to. So let's just kind of do a quick recap. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term. Others like Patricia Hill Collins have kind of further developed some of the understanding. So here are some of the kind of key points about intersectionality. It started in terms of addressing the particular experiences of black women in the States. And it wasn't just a recognition that they had these kind of two aspects of identity. It was rooted in the struggles in activism. It was rooted in a desire to tackle structural and systemic inequalities that had a long pathway through history and having an impact on people in the present time. That's where it really started. So it's kind of very helpful, step one, just to kind of think that intersectionality isn't a framework for looking at multiplicities of identities, but rather it's a framework for understanding power and how those power systems intersect with each other. So if we can apply the concept of intersectionality to other aspects of identity, it's kind of helpful to not think that what we're doing is we're seeing intersectionality as it relates to someone of faith who's also a woman or something like that. But what we're doing is we're taking some of the principles of intersectionality and recognizing their transferability, but it isn't the same thing because it is anchored, as I said, in that particular experience of African American women in the States, and kind of recognizing that the aspect of being black related to the kind of civil rights movement and that kind of challenge for rights and justice alongside the experience of women, and the kind of aspect of it intersecting at the power level is seeing, for example, let me make it concrete. In Kimberly Crenshaw's work, she kind of identified that in the women's rights movement, that the women who were often at the forefront, pulling the levers of kind of power within that movement, were white middle class women. So the experience of African American women, even though they were kind of allies and in coalition with women who were kind of trying to achieve more and kind of improved women's rights, that they were in those contexts, but were subordinated to the larger voice that when it kind of spoke about what was required, the changes that need to be made, spoke often of the kind of white experience of womanhood. And then if you kind of look at the experience of race, that often the people who are at the forefront of the civil rights movement, who kind of had the mics, had the voice, would often kind of talk about their experiences as they related to the whole community, but looking at it through a kind of very male lens. So the unique experiences of African American women would have been so subordinated in those contexts. So that's really where the concept started. And it isn't just about multiplicity of identities, as I've said. So I'd just kind of say, if you're really curious about understanding how powers intersect, it's worth recognizing that if you ask about those people who design our economic systems or our political systems, and kind of think about their identities, you can kind of see what's present and what's absent. And that is kind of how power gets played out, because you've got particular identities located in the people who are at the kind of helm of power at an international geopolitical level. And that kind of translates into the way in which our systems develop, our economic systems, as I said, our political systems, our religious systems, our educational systems. They reflect that kind of assumption about the way in which the world operates, or the norms within the world. and countering that requires paying attention to those power systems. So, yeah, as I say, I really hope that you'll kind of go and, there's so many videos on YouTube, so many books written about it, and I'd really encourage you to kind of go and find out from people like Kimberly Crenshaw, her YouTube videos, her writings, to really understand what it is. So there is some transferability to other struggles, other aspects of identity, but it isn't quite intersectionality as it was first coined. And I know it might sound like a purist approach to it, but if we depart from something, it's really helpful to understand what it is we've departed from, at least.